kind of learning. So if you haven't been to one of my classes before, we are going to be utilizing the chat. It's going to be engaging. We also are going to be doing an activity today that you'll need a small piece of paper and something to write with. It doesn't have to be like a clean piece of paper, just somewhere where you can jot down a couple things. We'll use that later on. I'll let you know when, and get excited for a really great class. So this is all about multitasking and monotasking, focusing on one task at a time, and that is going to be part of building your resilience. So you don't have to have been in any previous class on the building out or bring out your resilience kind of series. We'll go through more of what resilience means and also how to build that specifically today through monotasking. And before we get started, so if you don't know me, I am one of the coordinators for Wellness and Work Life. My background is in sport and performance psychology. I have experience working with athletes, soldiers in the military, as well as employees in their ability to be the best that they can be, help their mind work for them rather than against them, and build their skills so that they can bring their best self to work, their relationships, and be their best, most consistent performer. So with that, we're going to get started. When it comes to multitasking, what comes to mind? What do you typically think of when you hear multitasking? And are there any areas that you multitask more than others? Put it in the chat. Let's see what people typically think of when you hear multitasking. Of course, doing more than one thing at once. Pretty simple. Juggling jobs, work, jobs, stress, totally. I think multitasking can come from feeling stressed with a lot of different things coming at you all at once. Multitasking when you're cleaning at home, eating lunch, doing a webinar. Yeah, maybe you're doing that right now. Doing several things at once without focusing on just one thing. Elisa being more efficient. Kimberly said children. Yep. Chaos. Totally. Are there more, do you typically multitask doing more, well, let me rephrase. Are there areas where you typically multitask more than others? I know some people had said work. Was there anything else that you really notice where you're multitasking or have feeling like you have to multitask more than others? Okay, Holly saying home, of course, juggling children's responsibilities, family needs. I'm also assuming that, if you have more than one child, you are going to have to multitask between the two of or the three of them. Self-care, family, and home. Yeah, so you can definitely see multitasking coming up in a lot of different areas. It typically means that you have a lot going on and you feel like you have to be more efficient or you feel stressed, and getting a lot of things done through multitasking feels like it's going to help. The simplest definition that we can provide, which a lot of you had already put in the chat, is multitasking is performing more than one task at a time. Very simple. It could be answering emails while also working on a project at work, filling out a form while you're talking on the phone, listening to music and working, or a podcast. That's more like work type multitasking. You could also be multitasking at home, checking social media while you're watching a movie, or cooking dinner and having a conversation, trying to clean as well as talk to your children. Of course, that is going to look different for everybody, but typically, the more responsibilities we have, the more we tend to multitask and feel like we have to multitask to get it all done in the waking hours of the day. Of course, a day is 24 hours, but hopefully at least 7 of those hours are going to be sleeping. So the rest of the time, we want to be as efficient as possible, and that typically means in our minds that we have to multitask and do more than one thing at a time. So now that we all have an understanding of what multitasking is, and you're starting to think about what you do or what multitasking looks like for you, I want you to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 about how you feel, how strongly your multitasking skills are. So think about how much you typically accomplish during the day, how productive you are, and what it looks like throughout the day when you're multitasking. 1 is considered like awful, terrible multitasking skills. 10 is the best. You are an expert multitasker. So put your rating in the chat. Let's see how people feel their skills are. All right, so I'm seeing a 10 and I'm seeing a 1. Um, Gina, Monday through Friday, or Monday through Thursday is a 9, Friday is a 3. I think that definitely highlights that it's not going to be the same every single day. Or even, yeah, Jessica says, you're a 9 to 10 until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then you drop to a 3. Yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of like 5, 6, and 7s. Yeah. Okay. So I think overall, I would say that out of the 100 people that are on the call, you know, we feel about 60 to 70% strong in our multitasking skills on average. Just in general, I know we're saying that it's going to look different day to day or throughout the day. We feel like our skills are changing. So let's put it to the test. I am going to send a link in the chat. Follow the link. It is going to take you to a concentration grid. It should be an 8x8 grid with numbers ranging from 00 to 64. So I'll give you just a second to bring yourself to that web page. And then I also want you to grab that piece of paper and something to write with. Have that, put it to the side, have it ready for you. What we're going to do to test your multitasking skills is use the concentration grid. How the concentration grid works is you're going to find the numbers in chronological order. So it starts with 00. When we are going to start, when I tell you to start, you are going to push the concentrate button at the top, and then you're going to find all the numbers in chronological order, starting with 00. So you'll click on 00 once you find that. Then you'll click on 01. Then you'll click on 02, and so on. Get as many as you can in the time that I give you. Okay, so that's your task number 1. And since we're testing our multitasking skills, we are going to also give you another task. And before I tell you that, can you repeat what we need to do for the numbers? So for the concentration grid, once you're there, you'll push concentrate, and then you'll start looking for each number in chronological order, and you'll click on that number once you find it. So you're going to start with 00. It'll highlight, I think, blue, and then you'll click 01, 02, 03. Get as many numbers as you can in the time that I give you. So that's task number 1. Task number 2 is listening to a story that I'm going to read you. It's going to be a work-related story, and there's going to be some key pieces of information in this story that I want you to remember, and I will quiz you on it at the end. So you have 2 tasks. That's going to test how good you are at multitasking. 1 is going to be the concentration grid. As you're finding the numbers, pay attention to the story that I'm reading you, because I will quiz you at the end to see how well you're paying attention and how well you are multitasking. Any other questions before we start? Okay. I'll count down from 5. Once I get to, I'll tell you go. You'll push concentrate on the concentration grid at the top, and I'll read the story. All right. So get ready. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. It's Monday morning at 10 a.m., and you're working away on projects for the week and listening to your favorite podcast. You see an email come through from your colleague, Grace, asking about the timeline for a big project you're working on together. You're about to respond when Jake knocks on your door looking for the numbers of students projected to attend the Lunch and Learn next Wednesday, the 1st. He needs to make sure that there's enough sandwiches for everybody. There's already 105 students registered for next week, but 50% probably won't attend, so you decide on ordering 80 sandwiches. It's always better to have more than run out. As you start talking about options, maybe you get a chicken Caesar salad wrap, BLT, but you also need a vegetarian option. Your child is texting you about their basketball practice being canceled tonight because the coach is sick. Now your mind is going to what you should order for dinner tonight. You planned on takeout, but since basketball is canceled, maybe you should try to make something. Should you do chicken Caesar salad wraps? Wait, no, let's focus on lunch for students next week. And I have to respond to Grace's email. Okay, stop right there. Write down the number that you got to on the concentration grid. Just write it down on the piece of paper. Don't put it in the chat just yet. And now I'm going to quiz you on the story that I just read you. So write down your answers on your piece of paper. First question is, what time was it when Grace emailed you? Second question, who asked for the projected student attendance? Number 3, when is a student lunch and learn? Oh, oh. Number 4, how many sandwiches did you decide to order? And number 5, what sport does your child play? Okay, we are going to see how many of these questions you got right. So it was 10 a.m. when Grace emailed you. Jake is the person that asked for the student attendance. The lunch and learn is Wednesday the 1st. You decided to order 80 sandwiches, and your child plays basketball. So you are going to take the number that you got to on the concentration grid and add it to the number of questions that you got correct. And I want you to put that in the chat. Let's see how everybody did. Okay, I'm seeing mostly in the upper 20s, 30s. Some are a little low, and some are high. Okay. Not too bad, actually. Okay. If the grid was 6 by 6, that's okay too. If you follow the link, it should be fine. This, of course, was just really about testing your your multitasking skills. So you can see how everybody else did. Okay, there might be some confusion on the scoring. So you're taking the number that you reached and adding it to the number of questions that you got correctly. And this was just about comparing how we did to everybody else who's on the call. Okay, save that number. We're gonna reach it in just a second. In comparison to just the concentration grid, first graders were able to find 25 numbers in about the time that you were given. So look back at the number that you got to and see how you did compared to a first grader. Maybe it was better, maybe it was worse. And again, it doesn't matter what the grid was set at. So 25 is the number that first graders got in the same amount of time that you were given today. Typically, first graders or younger children are able to immerse themselves in a task or an activity. If you think about, if you're a parent and you think about young children, watching them play games, especially pretending, they are completely immersed in that task and super focused and often oblivious to maybe if you're trying to talk to them. They're not paying attention to you at all. They're not multitasking. They're solely focused on what they're doing and having a great time. The more we grow up, the more experience we have, typically, the more we have to deal with, the more responsibilities we have, and the more we feel like we have to multitask. So while there was a range of scores that I see here on our chat, we didn't see a perfect score, right? We didn't see that everybody got all 5 questions right and reached that either a 36 or depending on the type of your grid, 64, right? We didn't see everybody get a perfect score. Most of you got around 30 to 40. Some of you, only got 10. Some of you got 50. And this was just to show that we're not able to do 100% of 2 tasks at once. It's not to show you that it's to, make you feel bad or anything, but the ability to be immersed in one task is typically natural. And as I said earlier, the more experience we have, the more responsibilities we have, the more we're confronted with multiple tasks at once, the more we have to think about, and the more our brains are being filled up, and we feel like our attention is being pulled in multiple areas or multiple ways at one time. So that ability or that natural feeling of being immersed in one task kind of diminishes as we get older. So now, as you had gone through that multitasking activity, remember what you rated yourself earlier before we did that. I want you to rate yourself now. Do you feel like you rated yourself well at multitasking? Remember, 1 is being terrible, 10 is being an expert multitasker. Rate yourself again. Okay, so I see a lot of people, they still rated themselves well, or they rated themselves high and they knew how well they are at multitasking. I see a little bit more like 3s and 4s than we saw earlier. Maybe a 5. So maybe you drop down a little bit. Maybe a little less confident in your multitasking skills. Again, this intention was not to show you that you're bad at multitasking or to make you feel bad. it's important to feel like you have those abilities to handle all the tasks or responsibilities that you need to. But typically, 93% of people in certain studies had overestimated their ability to multitask. We feel like we're being really efficient, completing 2 or 3 tasks at once, but reality is that we would be much more efficient and perform our best if we only focus on one task at a time. So if I were to give you that concentration grid and do the story at the same time, and if you were to tell yourself, I am only going to focus on finding as many numbers on the concentration grid as I can, you may have gotten more numbers as if you were to try to focus on both at once, both the concentration grid and the story. And vice versa, if you told yourself, I'm not even going to worry about the concentration grid, and I'm only going to focus on this story and pay attention to that so I can get all 5 questions right, you probably would have performed better at that compared to if you were to focus on both tasks at one time. And that means that doing isn't the same as performing, right? Doing 2 tasks at one time or 3 tasks at one time is not the same as performing your best in every single task that you have to do throughout the day. We feel like we're juggling a lot on work days when we get home from work and even on the weekends. And oftentimes that means that, we're working on a project at work and then we're getting Teams alerts or we're listening to a webinar and we're trying to work at the same time. And then something else happens. And before we know it, it's taking longer than it should to get back into that first task that you're doing, or that you're not doing your best at every single task. And that culminates, if you're doing that multiple times a day, it culminates into feeling exhausted and behind when you log off from work that day, or when you're going to bed at night and you feel like you were just run over by a truck because you had so much going on that day. And we are capable of doing multiple things at one time, but again, doing is not the same as performing and doing it really, really well. So that is because our attention is limited. You can talk on your phone and drive at the same time, but there's a lot of research that suggests that when you are doing that, you're twice as likely to miss traffic signals and make more driving errors as if you weren't talking on the phone. Of course, we know that that is super dangerous, and hopefully we aren't doing that, texting or even talking on the phone. But this research was done on not texting, but actually talking on the phone without, through your Bluetooth on your phone in your car. And so you're physically focused on driving, but you're still paying attention to the conversation that you are having on the phone, and you're still twice as likely to miss traffic signals. And then also to further this, the research shows that when you did see signals, or when the people in the study did see the signals correctly, their reaction time was slower. And of course, as we're driving, reaction time is super important. If something happens, we need to be able to react as quickly as we can. And if we're multitasking by talking on the phone and driving, our reaction time is going to be slower. So to reiterate, you may be able to drive and talk on the phone at the same time, but we're not going to be at our best. We are not at full brain capacity. We are not being able to pay attention to one thing at a time. If we are trying to do multiple things at once, our performance is not great. So that means that multitasking is actually a myth. When we talk about multitasking, when we hear people multitasking, or we feel like we're multitasking, whether out of necessity or just to try to be more efficient, that is actually not correct. And studies have shown this time and time again. It actually takes more effort to switch between tasks than it does to do one task fully and then move on to the next task. To switch tasks from the end of from one to another, whether that is just solely at work or going from work to home and trying to juggle both of those things, by the end of the day, we are going to be worn out and we feel like we don't have as much time to relax if we're trying to be productive every hour of the day that we're awake. Multitasking, in quotes, is actually more inefficient and we may waste time. So for those of you who feel like multitasking actually makes you more efficient, again, it takes more time to multitask and juggle multiple projects or multiple responsibilities at one time. It actually increases the time it takes to complete tasks by up to 40% because every time you switch between tasks, you lose about 23% or 23 minutes of concentration to get into a task, to get into and really remind yourself where you left off, to think through these processes. It takes some time. You can't just switch from task to task. With different projects, especially at work, that take different types of attention and different processes to think through. It takes you some time to remind yourself where you left off. It takes you some time to remind yourself what you were even doing. And even more simply, you can have a conversation with a coworker in the middle of working on a project, and you can pretty clearly understand or think back to a time where you had to tell yourself, okay, what was I doing again? Or where did I leave off? And then you have to review and remind yourself. Even for me, I know like if I'm cooking at home and I'm using a recipe that I've never used before, where I actually have to look at a recipe, and then someone calls me or texts me and I'm like, responding to them. And then it takes some time to be like, hey, what did I just do? Where did I leave off? I have to reread it. And then again, it just takes more time, wasting time than if I were to just be solely focused on cooking and that alone and finishing that up and then responding to a text. And multitasking does lead to more mistakes or more errors. So just like in the last slide where I showed that talking on the phone and driving can cause people to miss traffic signals or make driving errors, we can, anytime we're trying to multitask or juggle multiple things at once, there are going to be more errors, more mistakes, and our creativity and innovation goes down. There's less time for those aha moments where like you're solely immersed in this task and you're thinking things through. And you get to that moment where you're like, yes, this is it. This is the solution. This is the direction we need to go in. If we're not fully immersed in some kind of task, we have less opportunity for those moments to break through and really be productive. So if multitasking is a myth, what are we actually doing when we think we're multitasking? We're task switching. So our attention, as I've been saying, is mono, like it's just singular. We only have one attention span. And so when we can't divide our attention, we are rapidly switching our focus and attention from one task to another. And of course, that is subconscious. We actually are, our brains are processing consciously and subconsciously millions of cues and stimulus at like 1 second. And that is including like sounds that we hear from our computer to outside to our phones, to the lights that we have on. We're constantly inputting information into our brain and filtering it. And then our brain is just, it's doing the work for you. But there's a lot of stimulus that our brain has to process throughout the day. Our attention is a little bit more controllable consciously. And so that is a great thing because that means that we can control it. But when we're trying to multitask, we're switching from task to task, and we're not dividing our attention because that just it's not how it works. It actually takes a lot more brain power and a lot more energy to switch from task to task, even if it takes half a second to switch from task to task. It's still more energy than we're spending if we were to just focus on one task at a time. So that's why being able to shift in a smooth and decisive and effective manner, being able to actually control when we shift our attention is extremely important because that allows us to not only keep our energy where it needs to be and our focus, but it allows us to be more efficient and actually perform well in the tasks that we're doing. Some individuals become adept at switching between task and task, especially in certain situations, but there's always an associated cost to that as well. So you may feel like if you rated yourself at a 9 or 10 on the multitasking scale, you may feel like you're really good at multitasking. But again, that cost of switching from task to task is the time that your brain needs to disengage from one task and switch to another task. So that switch readiness does increase time switching, but it can also deplete your energy. It can deplete your creativity or your problem solving skills later in the day. And I want to call back to those people who had rated themselves differently as the day goes on. You may feel like you're really great at multitasking in the beginning of the day, but then as you continue multitasking, your energy is kind of spent when you get to like 2 or 3 p.m. because that was a lot of energy and attention that just was spent on multitasking, not even thinking about the actual thinking that happened through. Okay, I think I paused. Am I okay?
Yeah, I froze for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, good. Okay, so with this, how does it tie into resilience? Resilience is a very broad term. I think we've all heard it by now. We all know that it's important. But resilience is generally the ability to bounce back in the face of adversity, challenges, and change. And while we're not experiencing a lot of really big adversity or challenges on a daily basis, um, we do experience a lot of change throughout the day. We experience a lot of small challenges throughout the day, whether that's work and home. And so we do have to be resilient on a daily basis to be able to face those challenges or be in a period of change where we're confident in our skills and we're confident in our ability to bounce back and continue moving in a way that's going to be not just surviving, but thriving. We want to be able to perform, not get through the day, but perform well in our day. And we want to be in control. We want to be consistent. And that's all part of resilience. Resilience is absolutely a skill that we deliberately practice, just like any other skill that we have. Communication skills, skills to plan, skills specific to your job, physical skills. Every skill that you have, you had to practice. You were not born with that ability. And resilience is exactly the same way. You can deliberately practice resilience with a lot of different skills. We'll talk about a couple of them today to help specifically with your concentration and your focus. But resilience in general is a skill that you can absolutely practice and get better at. And as I said, resilience is the pathway to consistent, excellent performance and cognitive and emotional well-being. We want to be reflecting on our day when we are home or talking to our partner. We're reflecting, in a journal maybe, or when we're going to bed at night and say, yes, I thrived today. I feel good about my day and I was my best self consistently throughout the day. So a couple ways to do that with specifically focus. And as we're talking about multitasking, we really want to think about monotasking, really focusing on one thing at a time. Our attention, being able to deliberately shift our attention, is all part of mental agility. And mental agility is one of the building blocks of resilience. So if we can build our mental agility, we are one step closer to being our best, most resilient self. So I'm going to give you three things to think about, and reflections and ways to practice mental agility through focus to help you be more resilient. And Miranda, can you put the worksheet, the two-sheeter in the chat? So Miranda's going to share a worksheet. It's just a two-sheeter that you can print out or you can fill out, download and fill out on your own. This is really just for you to help yourself focus on those things that are going to help you be to actually perform in the tasks that you have throughout the day rather than just getting through them and checking them off your list and feel like at the end of the day you did your best work today. And the first skill that you can practice is called WIN. So it's an acronym. It stands for what's important now. And this is all about prioritizing for time management, making sure that your priorities are exactly what you're working on in the moment, especially when there's multiple responsibilities or things happening at once. Pulling us back to that story that I had read in the beginning of this webinar. That person had been answering emails, listening to a podcast, and then multiple people were asking her for certain things. And so that's typically how, my day goes at least, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. So when there are certain things that are coming at us all at once, we need to figure out what's our priority, what's important now. We need to win in the moment. Our brain loves a target. We love something to focus on. So we need to be able to direct that target, our brain, to exactly what our priority is rather than what not to focus on. You have all heard by now, I'm sure, don't think of a pink elephant. What are you thinking of right now? Probably a pink elephant. So that is similarly to what win means, what's important now, rather than saying, I don't want to focus on my phone right now, or I cannot respond to that email right now. Our brain only hears phone or it only hears email. And so that is actually what we're thinking on, what we're thinking about, and what we're focusing on. So rather than telling our brain not to focus on something, we need to tell it exactly what to focus on. And that's where win comes in. So being able to prioritize one specific task and then also tying it back to your values or the things that you think are really important in your life, just in general, is going to help you actually focus on those things. When acting within our values, you'll feel more motivated internally, you'll be more immersed in a task, and you'll feel more fulfilled at the end of the day, energized rather than exhausted. So this is exactly what it looks like on the worksheet that Miranda had shared. But basically, this is your focus circle. So your one thing, your main priority, you would put in the center circle. Then you would list out all the ways or the things, the distractions that would pull your attention away from your one thing. And that's internal and external distractions. So for example, if I were to really want to prioritize, let's say, this presentation. Um, I am being really, really good in the moment performing this presentation for you all, making sure that I am fully immersed in this presentation. That would be my one thing. So I would write down my presentation or this presentation in this center circle. And then internally, I would think about all the distractions coming from within myself, writing that down. So that could be I'm getting hungry, it's close to lunchtime. So feeling that, physiological signs of hunger. Maybe I'm thinking about my workout from this morning. Allergies are really big right now, so feeling a little bit stuffed up or my throat's a little scratchy. Those are all pieces of internal distractions. And then I'll list out the external distractions. So a phone call, getting a text, Teams chat, people putting questions in the chat. Those are all distractions that might pull me from this presentation, pull my attention. Because remember, our attention cannot be split between two different things. It's just rapidly shifting from one thing to another. So, being able to identify these distractions are really important because once we identify and name the distractions, we can be prepared for them and we can do things to actually pull ourselves back and our attention back into that one thing. For me, back into that presentation. So I'm not feeling like I'm, fighting my attention or myself. So this is a really great way or a great skill to help yourself identify this priority or one priority throughout the day. And you can even do this skill or write down your one thing and your internal or external distractions multiple times a day. And it could change, right? So in the morning, maybe you really have to get a project done. That would be your one thing. The internal distractions and the external distractions could be different, right? And then after lunch, you're working on something completely different. You could do that again to set yourself up for a really focused and productive work time. And then when you're at home or you're on the weekends, your one thing or your priority could be different. So this can be used across the board and just to help you prioritize. Skill number 2, and once you've identified your one thing, your priority, is using cues. So cues are going to help you be in the present moment. So you've already prioritized your one thing. Now you know the distractions that may pull your attention away from that one thing. If they do pull your attention away from that one thing, you can use cues and a couple different types of cues to put yourself back into your one thing or your priority. Cues are phrases that can be used to literally cue yourself into what you should be doing or how you should be feeling. So you've got do cues and be cues. Do cues are there to help you direct your focus or attention to techniques, strategies, um, or or things that you really need to actually do to prioritize that task or complete that task. And then B cues are going to be your emotional or your mental state. So this is an indication of how you want to perform, right? So do you want to be like energized and psyched up? Do you need to be more calm, confident? This is a really great way to maximize your effort and to cue your mind into the way you want to prioritize this or the way you want to carry yourself out throughout this project or task. And these cues really keep you present and focused because again, remember, your brain loves a target. So if you are able to recognize that you're being distracted by either an internal or an external distraction, you can tell yourself or remind yourself with these cues, your brain is then able to refocus back on your one priority. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of cues that I've used in the past for certain things. And again, these could be different cues for different tasks. So do cues could be like slow down. So for this presentation, for this webinar, I can say to myself, let's slow down, drink the water. That also helps me slow down and actually prioritize the moment and the presentation. Breathe is another great one. Taking a breath or two, that's an action that's going to help me prioritize or shift back to this presentation. And then do start the show. Start the show is more of, okay, it's go time. We're going to start. And that tells my brain that we are focusing in on this one moment. B cues could be something like smooth and confident. So I want to speak smoothly and confidently. Slow and steady tells me, this is how I want to be throughout this presentation. Let's go is more of like a pump up, like, let's go. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. People are here to spend their lunch hour with you, or prepare before their lunch hour. That kind of hypes me up a little bit. And then this is a classic one. It's from Bruce Lee. I'm water. That means that whatever happens, I'm going to go with the flow. I am going to prioritize my one thing, but there's nothing else distraction wise that's going to rattle me to the point where I can't do this presentation or I can't do this task that I have. So these, again, are great ways to pull yourself back into the moment if you feel like you're being distracted or your attention is being pulled in multiple directions. And then the third thing that you can do to focus on that one task and build your resilience is real-time refocus. So in the moment when you're feeling yourself distracted or your mind is wandering, you can recognize and replace. So again, stop what you're doing and refocus on what's important now. Focus on that win. And the one way that you can do that is using an if-then statement. Going back to giving your brain a target, you can literally write down if I feel distracted or if my phone rings in the moment and that's not the priority, then I will, and then you would replace and then you would give yourself the behavior that you need to do. So in this presentation, if my phone rings and I know that's already an external distraction that could happen, then I will refocus on my notes or take a drink of water and then get my mind back into this presentation. So that's a great way to, again, stop what you're doing, recognize that you're not actually in the task that you need to be in, and then refocus. Deliberate breathing is a really, really great way to stop, slow down, and then refocus, especially if you have the time. So if you think of a work example where you just have to get a project done throughout the day, and you have time to slow down, refocus, do a couple um, do a couple breaths or a breathing exercise. That is a great way to refocus on that task. And you don't have the time constraints that maybe some other tasks require. So one way to do that is making your exhale longer than your inhale. So you would breathe in for 2 or 3 seconds, then you would breathe out for 3 or 4 seconds. And this, whatever is comfortable for you, you can start there. The more you practice, the longer you can breathe in and the longer you can breathe out. But the biggest thing here is that your exhale is longer than your inhale. That allows you to slow your heart rate down, just to slow your breathing down and refocus. This is also a great way to increase your energy. So deliberate breathing is going to be a great way to refocus in real time. And then lastly, you can use a mindful moment. So if you feel like you're distractions that you identified are pulling your attention, your be cues and your do cues aren't necessarily working, you can take a moment, again, if it's not a time constraint priority, and identify 5 things that you notice in the moment. So mindfulness is a great way to give yourself a short break in your priorities or the projects that you're working on. Really focus on the present moment. So you would identify one thing that you can hear, one thing you can see, one thing you can smell, one thing you can taste, and one thing you can feel. It takes, probably about 15 to 20 seconds to actually do this. Then you can refocus back in the present moment, and the tasks that you have, that's your priority. Again, this is a great way to refocus on the present moment, kind of dispel all your distractions or things that are pulling you in different areas, different ways, and refocus on the one task at hand. So those are 3 skills that you can use: the when, what's important now, your cues, and your real-time refocus. And of course, within those 3 skills, you've got a couple different ways that you can actually practice those skills, because resilience and attentional focus is a skill. Wanting to monotask is actually going to help you be more efficient. It's going to result in less mistakes, and you will feel energized at the end of the day, or at least feel like you have accomplished what you needed to without being pulled in multiple directions at one time. Because at the end of the day, that is exactly what we want to do for our own emotional well-being, for our relationships, for our job performance. Being able to perform rather than just tick things off the list and actually just do them is going to help us feel more fulfilled within our values, within our days, and help us be our best selves no matter what we're doing. And one of the ways that we can kind of round this out is a reflection at the end of the day. So you can ask yourself, what did you accomplish? Not just the tasks, again, not just the to-do list, but the interactions, the connections, and then talk about or reflect on how you carried yourself throughout the day. How were you mentally or emotionally throughout the day? Was it really draining, or did you feel, in control and energized? And then you can also rate yourself on a scale, or how fulfilling your day was on a scale of 1 to 10. And that can allow you to reflect and continue building those skills. Because if we're not aware, if we're not able to reflect on these things, the same thing's going to happen day in and day out, and nothing's going to change. We're not going to feel more in control. We may be multitasking more, and then we're not able to be our best selves at work, at home, and for our people that we care about in our lives. So I am happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Again, you can download that worksheet that gives you some space to practice the 3 skills. That's a great way to build your resilience, really get focused on the one task that you have that's your priority at once, and be your best self.